Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're a doctor, your voice matters, and here you'll hear from colleagues who are finding ways to move forward in today's healthcare climate. If you're a healthcare leader or a patient, your voice belongs here too because these are the stories and conversations you need to hear. This podcast is about connection, advocacy, and creating a healthier future for both doctors and patients. If this matters to you, please like and subscribe. It helps these voices reach the people who need them most. And I would like to share that we're hosting an amazing physician retreat October 9 to 12, 2026 at Windrose on Hudson in Ossining, New York. It will be a soul-filling event for doctors and CMEs will be available. Please reach out for more information if you're a doctor interested in attending, or if anyone would like to sponsor our retreat, we can create sponsorship to fit your budget. The registration link will be in the show notes. And I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Cormac O'Donovan and Dr. Ralph Doc LaGuardia. Thanks for joining us today, Cormac and Doc.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. By way of a brief introduction, Dr. Cormac O'Donovan is a neurologist, School of Medicine professor, coach, well-being keynote speaker, and facilitator. And Doc LaGuardia is a country doc in solo practice, triple specialized in internal medicine, bariatrics, and geriatrics, also practicing integrative medicine. And today we'll be talking about how you've both been practicing medicine for a long time and you've borne witness to many changes. Lots of doctors are leaving clinical practice, and we need doctors. I need doctors. And my question for you will be, how have you crafted a sustainable career in medicine, and what advice do you have for your colleagues and healthcare leaders? So that's a preview of our question, though I always begin by asking what you'd most like our audience to know about you. And Cormac, would you like to go first?
Yes, I'm a neurologist, and I've been in North Carolina for about 30 years. But as you probably guessed from my accent, I grew up in Ireland. That's where I went to high school, went to med school. And so I've kind of experienced life in two different countries and maybe two different ways. And I think that's been a valuable experience for me. Things are different, but there are a lot of things that are common, and I like to focus on the common things that humans do. So no matter what corner of the world, there's a basic human needs that has really been of interest to me. As a neurologist, I'm interested in the brain. Maybe I should be a psychologist, but I find that's something that kind of interests me when I was young and still interests me and is an ongoing interest.
Yeah, well, that's great. And one of the first doctors that I spoke with, and I got his book From Hurting to Healing, Delivering Love and Medicine, that's Simon Craig, and he's based in Australia. And when I read his book, speaking to what you just said, that helped me realize that these issues are ubiquitous around the world and over time. So these voices and these stories that we're sharing help everyone. So, Doc, what would you like us to know about you?
Well, I was trained also in Europe and Italy. So I'm American, but I went to school there. And I came back. I did a surgical residency for a year. Hated that. Switched to internal medicine. And then I got board certified in internal medicine, bariatrics, which is weight loss, and geriatrics. But my real interest was functional medicine and well, integrative medicine, but that's kind of evolved into functional medicine. And eventually, I began writing. I've written 3 books on medicine. My first one was about 10 years ago. It's called The Doomsday Book of Medicine. I wrote that because there was a real need in the prepping community and the doomsday community about real medical stuff. There's a very popular book that's just terrible, and everyone was using that book, and it gave very ridiculous advice, like go if you get bit by a snake, go to poison control. It's a post-apocalypse book. There is no poison control, and it just drove me crazy. So I sat down and said, I'm going to write everything down that a patient could do without pharmaceuticals to treat all of their medical problems. It turned out to be 900 pages, but it was the Doomsday Book of Medicine, very well received. It's actually the medicine book for preppers that everyone uses. Then my publisher said, you got to tone it down. You're too hardcore in your book, so they want to make it to a wider audience. So I just kind of rewrote it into the Bible of alternative medicine. Then 2 years ago, I wrote the Infected Secrets from the Medical Underground, which was how to treat all infections without pharmaceuticals, with emphasis on COVID and respiratory viruses and things like that. That did very well. That's still sells very well. Then it wasn't enough, so I decided that I was going to start a Substack page, and so about almost 3 years, it'll be 3 years in March, I started the Medical Underground on Substack, which anyone can reach at medicalunderground.substack.com. And every week I write deep dive articles there. I mean, 50-page, 60-page articles sometimes on different subjects. This week I did leaky gut syndrome, but every week I do different ones. That's growing in popularity slowly but surely. But that keeps me busy. I'm also medical director of a nursing home, and I have a horse farm, an organic horse farm. My wife rides the horses. I plant the trees and the bushes, and I've got a geodesic dome greenhouse that I spend a lot of my time in during the winter. But that all keeps me busy with my 4 horses, 3 dogs, and a donkey.
Well, that's a lot. So thank you for sharing that. And I also like people remember the stories most of all. And you've both been practicing a long time. So Cormac, if you could share a story with us, it could be related to patients, your own experience through medical training. What would you like to share?
Um, well, there are many, but one main one sticks out. About, I think, 13 years ago, there was an incident at the hospital, and it didn't work out too well. And I was quite upset about it, and people thought I was burned out. And this was at a time when people didn't even know what the word burnout was. So I took some time, went on a journey. I've talked about this in talks to other doctors, shared my experience, but it kind of gave me a perspective of how things, when they could go wrong. And I don't think there's any wrongs or failures. There's a learning lesson. I can talk about it now. I'm here on your podcast. Obviously,
Mhm.
things have rebounded and I've been able to give back. But it kind of saw that was my journey. I kind of understood the why. It made me pause. It, sent me to a place where I doubt a lot of things about me, but I'd have to say it was lucky. Others might say I did it of my own accord to be able to bounce back and go back to medicine. And, my other thing has been is keeping me on this journey is kind of giving back, to help other physicians like you're trying to do here is to kind of give back from my own personal experience. I don't have a PhD in physician burnout, but it was a learning curve and
Mhm.
I can sit and talk to peers about things when it fell down. So you might say, was that a good or a bad thing that happened to me?
Right.
And it's no, there were bad things about it. It was scary, but there's probably good things because I was able to learn. It was a hard lesson and come back and that's what kind of motivates me as I, can talk about later. It's, I
Mhm.
can see in others one person at a time, um, helping one person at a time. That's what's given me joy to, you'll never walk alone through those things. Because there are other people who went that journey and it hasn't worked out as well, and they've left medicine. And I think they should be in medicine as much as me. So we can't judge people, based on experiences.
Right, absolutely. And I say all the time, every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. So thank you for sharing that because I feel like back in the day, doctors wouldn't have even said what you did, right? But now that's so important and to reduce the stigma and say that we all in our lives have like mental health challenges at some point. And it's also important to spotlight that it can happen at any time in your career,
Mhm.
whether you're early career or later career. Go ahead.
I think as a relation to that is, I'm in North Carolina, as I said, and the reason I bring that up, one of the things that developed after that is, I found that maybe I was the only person with this problem with burnout, but more as I talked, it became more widespread. And as a result of that, if one is looking for accomplishments per se, a group of us got together and went to the medical board and
Mhm.
said, we would like for you to help us with on the licensure to be less stigmatizing about doctors seeking help. So we're able to change the wording on the license where questions about physical or mental health, which are really irrelevant, mainly related to past experiences,
Right.
and ask that very common sense question that if you are unable to come to work or have a problem, you will take care of it. So that didn't bring any judgment because people were reporting things, people were not reporting things, and it just created a lot of problems. So, for example, I use the example as different people bring different perspectives to medicine, and that's great that we're not all of the one type. We know that about a third of physicians suffer from depression, and that it's never a good thing, but they can definitely empathize a little bit more with their patient if you've experienced those symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the time, I have been lucky in a certain regard, but when somebody expresses feelings of depression, which is a very temporary thing, then it's not like I didn't, win a game, I lost some money and stuff. These are major things. So we've been able to do that, and it's a small thing. And then, as you know, probably others, that was recognized by other medical boards, and it's changing the whole culture now. And there's been a pressure at a national level that doctors should not feel stigmatized about being vulnerable and human. And we don't realize this, but actually physicians, our patient, I should say, would like us to see the more human side of us. And sometimes we feel we can't share that. But certainly it's important for the connection with patients, which I think is the reason I stayed in medicine. It's connecting with the patients.
Yes, absolutely to all of that. And I've become an ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, and that's
That's
what
it.
they're working very hard to do, as well as to remove those intrusive questions on licenses and a lot of other things to make mental health support accessible. So thank you very much for sharing all of that. And Doc, I know you have a ton of stories too. What's a powerful story that you would like to share?
Well, just referring to what Cormac was just talking about, we're always trained, to be perfect as we go through our residencies. We're always the guy who get everything right, going through college and medical school, because you don't get to become a physician unless you're at the top of your class. And that kind of mindset goes with us, accompanying us into our practice, where you're never going to bat 1,000 in your practice. You're gonna make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Bad outcomes come and have nothing to do with you. And it's very difficult for us, well, at least for me, not to own it. I too would get depressed. Not, I wouldn't go into a depression, I'd say, but the events got me depressed, and it would ruin my day for a few days. And I would dwell on it and think, man, this is not fair or whatever. And it was a case a few years ago where a patient of mine came to me. She was married to a dentist and she couldn't get pregnant. Tried everything, been to all kinds of fertility specialists, blah, blah, blah. Was crying in my office actually about it. She wanted to get pregnant so bad. I said, well, listen to me. I try to connect my patients on a personal level. I'm friends with the vast majority of them, and I like to get down and talk to them and give them personal advice about their lives and stuff, whether they want to hear it or not. but
Mhm.
but anyway, I said to her, listen to me. You're type A. You're a maniac. You're trying too hard. I said, next time you're ovulating, I said, plan your ovulation. Go away with your husband. Bring a couple of bottles of wine. Get a Johnny Mathis tape. I said, have sex all weekend. She comes back 2 months later pregnant. She was happy as happy can be. I do a physical on her at one point, and I actually she wanted to fix me up with her sister at one point. I was going through a divorce. That's how happy she was. But it turned out really bad because, unbeknownst to me, she came in and I did a physical on her, and I said to her, "You have a lump in your breast," and she said, "I know. I already saw the surgeon. I was biopsied. It was all negative." Great, I'm done. I just wanted to point it out to you. Anyway, it turned out to be a lie. She did see the surgeon and refused the biopsy and blew him off, blew the two OBGYNs off, and myself. Had the baby, got bad breast cancer, and died. And her husband sued all of us. And that lawsuit was traumatic for me because I did nothing wrong. I felt so wronged in the whole deal. I mean, here was a guy that found it, pointed it out, she lied, and now I'm getting sued. And it took, I think, 5 or 6 weeks we were in court. It was a ridiculously long case. And I had closed my practice. No one's paying. I'm still paying my staff. But that was nothing next to the trauma of sitting there in court. The first day, the trial attorney came in, held a picture of her, like a 2 foot tall picture, walked around, showed the jury her holding the baby, and said, "They killed her." That was his opening line. They couldn't find anyone to testify against me except a guy from Virginia, that some loser that they brought in, and said that when she told me that, I should have called the surgeon and checked on it. And I said, "This is ridiculous. I have to assume they're not lying to me." At a certain point, I said, "I can't check on everything. It's just not practical." Anyway, long story short, we won the case, but the other 3 doctors quit practice. 2 OBGYNs and a surgeon quit. And they weren't that old. They were in their 50s. And it's wiped out 3 physicians who did nothing wrong. And it left a bad taste in my mouth for years over that. I still get angry when I even think about it. And those are the kind of things that I think Cormac was alluding to, that it takes the joy out of medicine, and it makes you feel really alone when it's happening. You feel like, oh, this is, oh man, you start questioning yourself, and you think about, oh, could I have done something else, because we're perfectionists, most of us. We like to do things right. Most of us want to do the right thing. I know we get accused of being money hungry and all these other things, but I think the vast majority of physicians are driven by altruistic means that they're not, yes, we like to make money like anyone else, but we're not there for the money. I mean, there's a lot easier ways to make money than go to medical school and work 60-hour weeks and, for the rest of your life. I mean, my hours are brutal. I'm probably 60, 80 hours a week. But I think what keeps me and kept the joy in my practice was my patients. I truly love most of them. I kissed them, I hugged. I break every rule you shouldn't do. I kissed them, I hugged them. I hug the old ladies. I kiss everyone. I'm a kisser, but I think patients like it. You reach out to them. I'm honest with them. We talk about stuff. And so I think that keeps the joy in my practice. Just the fact that I'm friends with most of them. The first 2 minutes of my office visit is always catching up on things, personal things in their lives, and I think patients like that.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's
Yeah.
another thing that historically doctors wouldn't talk about, is if there's like a complication, or if you get sued, because there's so much trauma and shame surrounding that. And on top of that, many doctors are told not to talk about it. So not only is, you're trying to help somebody, right, and then something happens, or it's perceived that something happened and you feel horrible to start with, and then on top of that, you're told not to talk about it. So that just adds layers to the trauma and shame. I will give a shout out to Dr. Gita Pensa. She is a ER doctor in Rhode Island, and she now has a podcast and a whole side business, Doctors in Litigation, because she was one of my earlier guests, and she had gotten sued, and then it came back again, and it almost did her in, but she's like, I'm either going to sink, or I'm going to swim and help other people, and she figured it out. But thank you. That's why these conversations are so important, because these things do happen, and just everyone feels less alone if you can share that, and you're never alone, and there's always people that want to help and listen.
I
um
just,
Go ahead.
yeah, I just like to echo, I feel so bad that you had to go through that, hearing that story. I mean, I've been, I have not been sued like that, but I can only imagine, sometimes I've given expert witness about frivolous, as you said there, frivolous lawsuits. And it makes people hard. So, but on the same, again, in this work, I'm helping people who are just stressed a little bit, who might become disengaged or kind of get turned off for lesser reasons. I think people like you are very dedicated and have done a great job in medicine, but other people, we need all of the people, even those who become disengaged just because there's small things, even the little things they bring up. So I'm a believer that everybody's thing should be heard and not forgotten. We have retreats, but things are important to different people. It's not coming up with one solution, although we can take the low-lying fruit, which we think we know what the main drivers are. But it's important to hear that everybody gets heard. And I see those micro traumas like you had might be considered, but there's these micro traumas that occur each day. If you're in a different profession, if you're a surgeon, you're more likely to have, or in an ICU, a major trauma. But there are other people, because I work in the outpatient clinic for the most part. I mean, I work in the hospital, but it's those little things that are accumulating that people say, well, you'll get over it. But I really enjoy what you say about the relationship with the patients. I've done a lot of science, but if I tell the friends stories, and I think they are friends, they, as
Right.
you've probably said, I won't go into the details, but somebody was through a lot of stuff in brain surgery, and we
Mhm.
finally cured him and took him off medicines. And I said, "You're cured. You don't have to see me again." He said, "No, you're my best friend."
Yeah, right,
So
right.
were you coming to me because you're best friend? I've shared more. I've spoken to you more than I've spoken to maybe many family members in my life. You know what I mean? So there are those patients, who, and then they appreciate when you're honest. I told somebody I don't really have a new medication for you, and they said, "That's okay. We trust you." Everybody's worried about Google and AI, and it'll be something else. But that human touch, that trusting some other person, we need that. Whether they're patients, we need that in life, in our life partner, our family members, and our friends.
Mhm.
When you mentioned Google, my wife gave me a mug for Christmas, which was great. It said, "Don't confuse your Google search with my medical degree."
Very good.
I have that in my office. Every once in a while, I'll take it out and put it in front of a patient that starts telling me about some ridiculous thing. Because sometimes they'll say to you, "Oh, I said, why did you take that medicine or whatever treatment I gave you?" "Oh, I talked to my hairdresser and she knew a person that did it." I'm thinking, my God, are you kidding me? There's a reason you didn't do it, and now you're mad because it did, the treatment didn't work that you didn't do. And so
Yeah. I
sometimes,
just got hmm. I just got sent from a parent a chat GPT where she looked it up, or how her kid should be tried, this should be done. I said, well, I'm glad it was validated because we're on the right medicines, and now, but if you want to get a second opinion, feel better about it. And she's very sweet,
yeah.
but that's okay. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, since all the everything happened to me the past few years, I've seen 42 doctors and I've had wonderful and horrible experiences, but my great doctors, I would do anything for them and like I've some of them I've given them a hug or a fist bump and all of that and that means everything to me, that connection and that's what we're talking about and that's why we're, having these conversations today to make things better for doctors and patients. And I know that you've both spoken to that, to the connection and the patient. So, Doc, is there anything you'd like to add? Like when I'm asking, like, because both of you, a lot of doctors are leaving clinical practice earlier just because of all this challenges in practicing medicine today. You've both been around for a while and you're still practicing. So if you have anything to add, like how you've crafted a sustainable career in medicine and what advice do you have for your colleagues?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think I get the feeling. I don't know Cormac. I just met him a little while ago, but he seems old school like me. And I hear from my patients all the time. I'm not computerized. I dictate to a place in Georgia. They print it out and send it back. I have paper charts, and um, I don't sit there on a laptop in front of my patients. I hold hands. I talk to them. I look them in the eye. I examine them, and I constantly send them to specialists who they're very disillusioned with. So I'll say, "How did it go?" It happens probably 24 out of 25 times. They'll say he or she never looked up. They were on their laptop. And incredibly, they don't examine them. I can't believe how many patients you send to a specialist who never lay a hand on them. Cormac, we would have been thrown out
Yeah,
of residency in a day
absolutely.
if we didn't do that. It was unbelievable. And they go, "He didn't examine you?" Or I'll get patients who go to the emergency room and they get a $10 million workup for dizziness. And CAT scans, EEGs, they're doing everything on them. They finally say, "I can't figure it out, go back and see LaGuardia." They come back and see me. And and I go, "Did he look in your ears?" They go, "No." I look and I go, "You have an ear infection." The most basic cause of dizziness. Yeah, and they're going right past
Right.
to the high tech stuff, never examining them, ordering $10 million worth of stuff, and then sending them back stumped. And it just drives me crazy. I spent so many times calling the ER complaining about that. I don't even bother anymore. They just don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It,
I do. I won't share any details, but recently I was at a doctor appointment with my a relative, and it was a specialist, and that doctor didn't touch the patient either. That doctor shook our hands when we walked in, and then that was it. And I fully understand what you're saying. So I think that's great advice. Is examine the patient. So I think that's great. And
Activation.
Cormac, oh,
there's
go ahead.
just on that topic, there is a drawing that a child did when she went to the doctor with her mother and her sister who had back pain. and another younger child, and she just painted the picture, and it went on one of these very well-known medical journals, and the doctor was turned their back and was at the computer. So it's not this
Hmm.
perception or bias. If a child just children just say things as they are, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's a big thing about the friend, again, just echoing what you said, a story of a lady who was referred for a breast cancer diagnosis to go out to the best to a medical facility out west, and they clearly were the best in terms of technology. And she came back and said exactly what you said, but they never laid a hand on me. They had specialized scans. And I think I Kim, for me, what's kept me going is it's the very basics of the why. Why did you go in? And the why was always wrong. So to me, it sounds very non-cool, but when I was in Ireland, I would go into a patient and ask them about the symptoms they're having, the numbness, the dizziness, and also try to be appreciative that they were human and their emotions, and I would come up with a diagnosis. So 40 years after graduating med school, I've learned all about technology and drugs, but at the end of the day, tomorrow, it'll be a new challenge to go in and find out because every patient is different. I teach them about seizures and I said, yeah, there's some similarities, but why did they get it? So the why is the same. And it's interesting what you say that because people might say, my brother's an engineer and he knows about computers, and I might dabble just out of curiosity more than anything else. I'm not engineering based, but one medical student said to me one day, because I've medical, said, "You're the only doctor who has used the computer." Because I would always leave it till the end. There was a great thing about typing up the note and
Right.
now have the thing, but it was never going there. You were losing the connection. It was far better for me to have to do the note afterwards than losing. Because if I was just typing up notes and looking at computers, you know,
Mm.
even though I'm very technologically qualified, I look at brainwaves. The main driver has been that. And I think the other thing is realizing there is change and being open to new ideas rather than telling. I tell patients sometimes I don't know what's wrong, but we'll keep an eye on it. I don't have to produce something. I'm a specialist. They come to me for the third thing. I said, rather than rushing into a diagnosis, I want to keep getting more information. I don't want to dismiss you, like the other two doctors. So those are kind of the small things. It's the connection,
Mm.
making them feel validated, emphasizing. That's what's kind of kept me. And you might say, is it another paper? Is it another book chapter that you might write or another research study? And the answer is no. But I am curious. I think I think every patient is research because they're different. Why them? You know?
Yeah, I love that. And seeing the humanity in all your patients. And my next book is going to come out soon, a collaborative book, and it's called White Coat's Human Hearts. And we also need to see the humanity in our doctors. It needs to go both ways. So this has been such a fantastic conversation. I would like you each in one or two sentences. What is your take-home action message for our audience? Doc, if you had to say in 1 or 2 seconds. I mean, said sentences.
To other doctors, I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. My message is enjoy your patients. Each one has a great story. They're, as Cormac said, they're humans and they all have their own experience. And don't be aloof. Don't stand above them. Get in the trenches with them. They'll appreciate it. You'll enjoy it more and they'll enjoy it more. And you'll get more information out of it. And in the end, you'll be a better doctor.
I love that. Cormac?
Well, I would say very similar, staying connected to the patients and also being curious and realize that there's change that's there and just focus on the why and control what you can. You can't control the rules and the regulations, but as long as you stay connected to yourself and have a good friend who speaks the same language to you, because trying to keep other people outside the system besides you and the patient and your family is just really impossible. But be true to yourself because that's the product at the end. Doctors got to look after themselves. We cannot bring them into an office just with a nice name on it for a nice institution because they're coming to see individual physicians at the end. It has never changed from the day doctor was invited, the patient and the doctor in the same room. So that's never going to change. So you might as well. Other things have taken place like electronic records and bills and Googles and stuff like that. But things come and go, but we're still here.
Absolutely. Well, I will put any links that you want our audience to know about in the show notes. And I just want to thank you again so much for being my guest today. I can't wait to share this conversation.
Okay, and thank you for all you're doing.
Oh,
An
you're
honor.
You're the only voice standing up for us out there, Kim.
Yeah,
well, I'll keep
thanks
going.
a lot.
All right.
Please do.
God bless you.
Okay,
Let's
well,
see.
thank
Yeah,
you so much. So, in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients, patients need to care about doctors too. So, stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
I like it.
thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.